In this class we want to talk about the Human Relations School of Management, and in particular we want to talk about what's known as the Hawthorne Studies. Human relations theory was developed from the Hawthorne experiment. Elton Mayo established the Hawthorne experiment. In his experiment lasted from 1927 to 1932 at the Western Electric's Hawthorne Works in Cicero, Illinois. So this was an experiment that Elton Mayo conducted. He made observations of workers at the Western Electric's Hawthorne Works in Cicero, Illinois, and this happened between 1927 and 1932. And out of his observations, it's called the Hawthorne Studies, out of these observations he drew several conclusions which we still use and consider in the present day. The aim of the experiment was to show that a greater level of illumination in a working environment improved productivity. So the objective he was trying to establish was actually very, very straightforward. The workers, he felt, if they had more light to do their work, they would work harder. So it just came down to light, just to see if the workers had more light, would they work harder. That was the aspect he wanted to investigate. That was what he wanted to try and test. If you like, that was his hypothesis. The research carried out suggested that any changes in the level of light increased productivity levels. The research also suggested that productivity increased within the control room. So it was a proper experiment. He had a control group and he had the experimental group. And he varied the amount of light to see what would happen to the amount of output. Now, it seems very simple to us and very, very straightforward what's going on here, but in fact this was very revolutionary at the time it was carried out. It was very experimental. It was new, and this approach to management was also new. Just to test, to see what the working environment, the aspects of the working environment that affected productivity, what changes could be made in the working environment that would subsequently change productivity and output. This finding gave rise to a new area of study within management theory. Classical theory emphasized the control of employees to increase productivity. So the classical theory was employees needed to be controlled, they needed to be observed, they needed to be managed, they needed to be foremen and managers and charge hands. There needed to be people of responsibility to ensure that the workers worked. That was the model. That's the classical theory. This Hawthorne study and the way it was going about looking at productivity was radical. It was new. The findings of the human relations theory suggested that productivity increased because employees were being observed and felt like an important part of the research. So the employees were now, they viewed themselves as important because they were being almost treated more humanly. They were treated better, and as a consequence they felt more engaged. their requirements for more light was a very basic requirement, and management recognized it. At least that's what the Hawthorne Studies seem to suggest, and the employees were responding to this. Elton Mayo, extended the research by looking into the effects of fatigue and boredom and how these affected productivity, and also looked at these factors, how they could be controlled through rest breaks, work hours, temperature and humidity. So now Mayo had moved the experiment, moved the study from just looking at light, the impact of light on productivity, to looking at how fatigue and boredom could affect productivity, and also on how rest breaks, working hours, and how the temperature and the humidity in the working place, how all of these factors could affect productivity. So the study had widened out. He separated 6 female workers from the assembly line and supervised them. He enabled them to work under friendly conditions. Their aim was to assemble telephone relays. So these 6 workers assembled a telephone relay. He took them out from the rest. They felt important, of course, by him doing that. And they felt it was a friendly environment. It wasn't one that was being controlled by perhaps managers or line managers who were keen to show that they were doing a good job and perhaps not being very kind to the workers. Mayo occasionally made changes to the working conditions, but letting the workers know in advance what was being planned or what was being changed. There was an observer always present to take note of the working environment. So the whole working environment was written down. As many variables as could be observed. For example, the ones I mentioned earlier, say humidity, temperature, the light conditions, all aspects of the working environment, even ones which could not be quantified. For example, friendliness, as I mentioned a second ago as well. Now the results. Well, normal conditions was a 48-hour week, including Saturdays, and no rest breaks. And under these conditions, the workers produced 2,400 relays each week. They were then put on piecework for 8 weeks, and output went up. Piecework means they got paid by each one they produced. So they weren't paid on a weekly basis, they were paid on the amount of work they produced, and as a consequence they worked harder. So output went up. Then Mayo introduced 2 5-minute break periods, including morning and afternoon. And these 5 minutes, this experiment lasted for 5 weeks, just to see what was likely to happen there. Output went up again. Then the rest periods were extended to 10 minutes. And output went up considerably now. So it went up from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, and with the rest breaks the workers were more refreshed, and the day was broken up more, and they felt better, and output went up, and it went up considerably when it was a 10-minute break. A 6 5-minute break was introduced. Output fell slightly, and the workers complained that their workflow was interrupted too much. So too many breaks was bad. There must be an optimum, therefore. Too little was bad, and too many were bad, so there must be an ideal amount. So the workers objected to too many because their workflow was being interrupted. So the return to 2 rest periods, now with 1 hot meal supplied by the company free of charge. Output went up. So the workers felt some sort of relationship with the business. They empathized with the objectives of the business, perhaps. So output went up. They had rest breaks, 2 rest breaks of 10 minutes. They had a hot meal supplied free of charge by the company, and output went up. The workers were dismissed at 4:30 rather than the usual 5 p.m. shift. So now they were let off at 4:30, and output went up again. It seems like treating the workers well led to increased output. When they were dismissed at 4 o'clock, output didn't change. So output stayed the same. When the workers went back to their normal working condition, or normal working conditions, output was higher than previously recorded, 3,000 relays a week. So having gone through the experiment for several weeks, say 5 weeks, when they went back to their normal working conditions, output didn't fall back 2,400. It stayed at around 3,000. This was caused by a greater commitment to the team and more involvement with tasks. There was a better working climate. So the workers related more to the business, and even though they were gone back to the original, they felt more of a relationship with the business, so that output didn't slip all the way back. Now the results of this, well, Mayo discovered that production increased despite any changes he made. Productivity still increased even though Mayo cut out the breaks and the workers had to go to work longer hours. The workers had formed a social environment at the workplace. You see, the 5-week period in which the experiment took place enabled the workers to get to know each other, to perhaps get to know the line managers, get to understand the business, and that the business was perhaps a caring business. So they had formed relationships with the business and with other members of the team. So they had more commitment. He discovered that employees are motivated by much more than economic self-interest. So to get people to work, economics is just one part. The amount being paid is just one part of the motivation. There are many other factors. The workers raised their self-esteem when they felt like part of a team and were allowed to have a friendly relationship with the supervisors. So the workers had more self-esteem. They had more relationship, as I said earlier, with the rest of the team and also with the business. Mayo had gained their respect, their loyalty and their cooperation, which explains the increase in productivity despite reducing the rest breaks. So even though they had experienced the rest breaks, the meal and so on, when it was taken away and they went back to the start, they had the memory of how nice it was. So the productivity did not fall back. But it indicated to Mayo that people are more complex. They're not just responding to money, to the wages. They're responding to the whole working environment. The studies had positive effects. Having concern and care for employees gave them the sense of belonging. They considered themselves to be part of a team. This became known as the Hawthorne Effect. Workers relating to each other, relating to the business, because the business had enabled them to feel this way. Now, the conclusions on job performance. Well, the capability of employees are imperfect predictors of job performance. So it's not the capability of the employee so much as the overall approach of the employee. Some employees may be capable of doing a lot more but don't do it because they are not motivated to do it. Some employees may have little capability but they try hard because they relate to the business, or they relate to their fellow worker, or they relate to the supervisor. Informal organisations affect the performance of productivity. Informal organisations are more flexible. They may be seen as more friendly. The line managers are more friendly to the workers, they're more supportive, and that may affect productivity. The workers respond by trying harder. Establishing norms amongst groups affect productivity. If teams are formed and the teams have good relationships with each other in the team, and also the team itself has a good relationship with the business, then it may be possible to get the team to aim at a certain level of productivity. And all the members of the team, not wishing to let the team down, will work harder to try and achieve that goal as well. So the working environment is a social system and plays an important part in production. So production is not just economic, that's the point. It is to do with the social environment. It's a social system. Workers relating to each other, relating to the business. It's their view of the business, and that influences their productivity. Having informal groups allows more control over employees. Informal groups, strangely enough, the team, when it's formed, if the workers form relationships within a team, the team itself imposes a discipline. The workers don't wish to let the team down. They wish to support each other. So it gives more control. The experiments showed that organizations are not just technical economic systems, but social systems. That's the point, and that is most important. The disadvantages of this approach. Well, Mayo only focused on motivation from informal groups. He didn't widen it to look at different types of groups. His experiment was very, very straightforward, and you could say it was quite limited as well in scope, but it did flag up to him the importance of the social conditions. It doesn't consider learning capabilities and reflection aspects. People do learn. They learn by doing. They become more skillful, more adept at doing jobs, having done the job over and over many times. Admittedly, they become bored when they when they work at the same job or the same task over and over. So there are advantages to working on the same job, increased skill. There are disadvantages. It's dehumanizing, or many tasks like that are dehumanizing. So Mayo needed to really ideally look at those. And when people tried to reproduce it, there was mixed messages. But I think there was a very wide acceptance that now it was understood that money was just one of the motivators in work. There were many others, and it was the Hawthorne Studies that broke this ground for the first time and enabled us to have a wider and more realistic view of why people work and what motivates them in the workplace. So that is the Hawthorne study and the Human Relations School of Management. And that also concludes this talk. So thank you for watching.